Well, hello and welcome back. I am John Daughety, and you are the love. This episode's a little bit late. It was supposed to come out yesterday morning. That would have been Wednesday, November the 13th. Lots been going on in my life. I got a lot of dental work going on, so that's got me busy. Work's been kind of busy. And I'm trying to deal with some stuff and processing some things as well. If you don't know, this country the United States has been through a bit of an election. It's been pretty contentious and divisive, and there's a lot of very happy people and a lot of very not happy people going on. And this particular episode was planned to be about fear and judgment. And it may not seem like those two things are related, but they are. I'll show you why. I developed a script or an outline, stuff like that, but I've thrown it away because I want to apply it to how I'm feeling and how I see a lot of other people feeling and some of the questions that I'm getting about dealing with what's going on. So that's what I want to get into. I want to talk about fear, and I'll talk about judgment, and then I'll talk about what they're not.
We are the love, the roots run deep, simple truth that we can keep in every breath, in every sound. We are the love, forever bound.
All right, cool. That's the new song for the podcast. Kind of a little jump there, a little logo, whatever call it. I like it. I hope you like it too. So here we go. The topics that we're going to deal with are fear and judgment. Now, the first part, fear. When I talk about fear, I don't just mean like being scared of stuff. That's true. And there's, nervousness or trepidation or just being afraid of something stalking in the night, worried. Worry is another aspect of that. The reason why I call this fear is because it feels like the same emotion. But when I talk about fear with a big capital F, what I mean is absence of love. So if I don't have love coming through me, if I'm not near it, if I'm not attached to it, if I'm not working in it, unconditional love, then what happens is that creates a void. It creates this empty space inside, in my mind and in my spirit, which will get filled up eventually with other thoughts. If I'm not really practicing and keeping things on an even keel, if I'm not forgiving when I really need to be, if I'm not giving myself care when I need to be, if I'm not feeling like giving love or affection or forgiveness, that's going to create a blockage. And that blockage is going to become an emptiness. And without that flow of love, that emptiness is going to start feeling like fear, like dread, like worry, like terror. At its worst, as it can manifest that far. Usually it doesn't get that far. For me, I have some other things going on. I've got a bit of an anxiety disorder. So that's something that I have to battle with on top of the other external thing. So I can usually parse those. I can usually feel them, and I know what's what. I know which one's which, what's different. In this particular election, there's been so much fear mongering from both sides. There's been so much attack on humanity in one respect, and then attack on a way of life and a system of government on the other. And if you believe either one or both, it's the end of the world as we know it. I don't think that's true. I don't know what things are going to happen, how things are going to turn out. I have some ideas based on my life experience. I think the incoming administration is going to be interesting and awful. I think it's going to be terrible and chaotic. I think a lot of people are going to get hurt. I think a lot of people are going to lose a lot. I think some people are going to die because of mismanagement or outright vileness. I'm not making stuff up just out of the air or coming off of somebody else's interpretation. I'm looking at what the people are saying they're going to do or they're going to try to do. I don't think they're going to be 100% effective because if past is prologue, they come in with a certain amount of incompetence. Inability to lead, inability to follow through. So I think there's going to be a lot of chaos mixed in there. However, some of their big ticket items are causing a lot of fear on both kinds of fear. On one front, there are people like myself who are pretty empathetic and humanistic, dread what's going to happen to immigrants, illegal immigrants and legal immigrants. And people here on visas and people here on temporary status, protected status, green cards, whatever. There's an indication that this incoming administration wants to strip people of their legal status and deport them. They want to round up illegal immigrants and deport them. They want to go after people who have become naturalized and denaturalize their citizenship, so remove their citizenship and then deport them. That last one is really, I think, just words for show. I think it's just, bluster, because the other parts of that are a lot more easy to accomplish without a whole lot of work. The taking people's citizenship away who have earned it is another story altogether. Still, that kind of rhetoric is terrifying. And it's meant to terrorize. The other part of that is the limitations that are being thrown against women's bodily autonomy. There's a lot of rhetoric around denigrating women. There's a lot of institutionalized racism that's on board with this incoming administration. There are a lot of anti-LGBTQ. There's a massive, illogical, unconscionable attack on trans people because they're easy targets. So for people who are in those classes, people who care about people who are in those classes, people who know people who are going to be affected by the hatred and the violence, are naturally afraid. And the people who are the targets. I could, as a gay man, reasonably be in fear of some of the nonsense that's being thrown around. I am not just on a spiritual level, but I have been through a hell of a lot worse than they can throw at me, and I got through that just fine. So I'm not worried about the Gestapo coming to the door. There's no sense in fearing things that we don't know are going to happen. We can use our imaginations and fill ourselves with trepidation and worry and terror, which is the goal of the incoming administration. It's so easy to control people who are scared. It's easier to control people who are terrified. It's easier to get people to be silent and not speak out. It's easier to get people to turn the other way. It's easier to get people to tell on other people if they're scared, if they're afraid of being attacked themselves. This is the Tyrant's Playbook 101. It's not new, and we have plenty of examples in the world of how to combat and defeat that type of mentality. However, it's still reasonable for people to have that worry and fear. Now, the other side of that is the psychic or the spiritual fear, the lack of love, because these types of things are not born out of love or compassion or forgiveness. They're built out of judgment and condition and fear and anger and hatred. And so battling that and trying to battle that it's corrosive to us. Just being exposed to it causes all kinds of thoughts to snowball in our heads. And those thoughts could create all kinds of different feelings, lots of anger, lots of resentment. And all of those things are based in big F fear, or a lack of love flowing through us. The energy of unconditional love, unconditional forgiveness. Now, judgment is not just like discerning right and wrong. That's different from what we'll be talking about right now. Judgment is what we think other people think of us, what we think we are, who we think we are, what we think our place in the universe is, how we fit in. The assessment of our action or inaction in a situation. Our identity is built out of that type of judgment, and how that plays into this other part of what I'm talking about as an uncertain future unfolds. There will be a lot of judgment about how we react, okay? To protect myself, how am I going to be focused on just me and the people I love? Or there are a lot of people under attack. How do I divide my attention up, and what can I do to help? Who do I worry about, right? And who do I not worry about? When something is happening in the world that brings a lot of stress, and we start picking up on the stress of other people, and we start hearing other people tell us what they're worried about, and we want to join them, we want to be in solidarity. So we'll take their worry and then we'll pick up their judgment. We'll judge others. So it just creates all of this energy, it blocks what we really need to be focused on. And that's the love inside of ourselves and our ability to express and transmit that love outward, despite whatever is going on around us, despite our personal predicament and situation, despite the unreasonableness of actors who have power that we don't have, who do things that we can't stop or control. So the judgment part of that comes down to especially the powerlessness and who do I feel sorry for? Who do I worry about? Who do I try to help? Do I try to help somebody and get myself in trouble? All these questions and stuff, just stop. Just stop. Don't get into that trap, because what's going to happen is you're going to get into this snake eating its own tail. And the snake is made out of fear and judgment. And that judgment just creates more fear, and the fear causes more judgment. It just goes round and round and round. And what happens is this state of anxiety, and that will flex out into different types of emotions and behavior: sadness, depression, anger, thirst for revenge, schadenfreude, when somebody else gets it, delighting in their misfortune, hoping for somebody else to suffer. None of that is helpful at all. It's not psychologically helpful. It's not spiritually helpful. It's not socially helpful. It does no good for anybody except bad actors, the people who are trying to manipulate others with fear. To combat that, to find the right course of action, to not get muddled down, to become immune from being gaslit, is to jump back inside, look at yourself, and love yourself, no matter what comes. And this takes practice. It's not easy. I do this all the time, but I can't just snap my fingers and do it. I haven't learned how to do that yet. Maybe I don't want to. Maybe I enjoy the drama. Sometimes I do. I admit that I definitely sometimes do enjoy the drama, especially when I can make it funny. But right now, this thing that's coming down the pike it's got me nervous. It's really bugging me, and it ought not to, because I don't control the people who are trying to control the people. The only thing I can do reasonably is go back into right now, become mindful of this moment, of my breath, of my substance, my awareness of who I am, the awareness of how I would prefer to feel in any moment, the desire and the willingness to reclaim my power from a stranger who doesn't matter, and from a future that hasn't been written. I need to stay in this present moment. I don't need to be pulled away from it by somebody who's running around saying terrible things about people and the terrible things that they plan on doing. I don't need to be focused on the terror of people, the worry of other people. I need to focus back on my connection to the one constant that I know is real and available all the time. And that is unconditional love. And if I'm in the thick of that hot soup of emotion and BS and fear and all of that, hopelessness and despair, anger, I can't get to that spot inside where I'm feeling that love. But for me, after a lot of years of practice, I know when I'm disconnected from it, and even being disconnected just a little bit, it's really uncomfortable. I kind of have to work to stay out of it, because it's not what I like anymore. I don't like drama. I don't like living in fear constantly. I don't like having knots in my stomach. I don't like not being able to be reactive to people, to be available when people need something that they don't have. So that's the thing, right? The fear and the judgment, the fear of things that I don't know, the fear of things I can't control, the fear of injustice, the judgment of other people, the judgment of other people's reactions, the judgment of other people's judgments of me, my judgment of my performance in these times. In my book, I quote Don Miguel Ruiz, who wrote The Four Agreements. And when it comes to the judge and judgment, I have nothing more to add to what Don Miguel Ruiz has said. I believe it, and I accept it, and I practice that way. So I would strongly recommend looking it up, checking out his podcast, his YouTube, anything he's got on social media. Pick up his book. They're really not expensive. And then my concept of fear, and that being the emptiness or lack of love, or love being blocked by those thoughts and emotions that paralyze us. That's me. You can check that out in my book if you want to. It's free if you want an ebook. you can go out to johndaughty.com and sign up for my newsletter, and you'll get, after you have double opt-in and all that stuff, you'll get an email that has links to that book. And then if you don't want to be on the email list, just unsubscribe. The link will be at the bottom of the email, or you can buy it. It's on Amazon. That'd be great, but I don't really care about that. But if you want a paper copy, you can go to amazon.com and find it. Just look for John Daughty. So here's the thing. I didn't want to keep this particularly long. There's not too much I can really go into. I just want to say that, through all the episodes in this series, it's leading up to freedom through unconditional love. We're going to talk about forgiveness. I've already done a podcast on forgiveness, why you should. I've already done a podcast on how to love yourself and why you should. But I'm going to do it again, kind of coming out of the book and completing this series. So we're in the second half of the series. As we progress through the series, we'll just be talking about practicing this stuff. Mostly it's just an educational, here's what this is, here's what this means, here's some ways to get unhooked from the pain and the distractions, the fear, the judgment, and start moving through that to have a comfort that's just natural, and it feels right all the time. And so the reason why I bring all of that up in this particular episode, because there's some nice real world examples. When looking at a situation like what we have coming down the pike, what looks like might happen, the absolute nightmare that has been promised by the elected leadership, it's difficult to imagine being at peace with that and being filled with unconditional love and forgiving that. It doesn't seem right compared to what we know and how we've been trained in this society by our parents, our peers, our education system, our churches, our religion, our social groups. We're trained sometimes to be vigilantes, and maybe the only thing that we can do is to hate those that do bad things. But the truth is that doesn't help. All it does is give them, the people that you want to hate, it gives them your power. It adds to the disease in the world, because love's not flowing through you. It's stopped. It's blocked. And what's coming out is reprocessed poison, the hatred, the fear, the anger that's generated by their actions and their rhetoric. You absorb that and then hate them. You're just refining it and refocusing it and spreading it out. It just multiplies. It doesn't stop it. It doesn't hurt them. It hurts you, and it hurts the people you love, and it hurts the people you come in contact with, because you are not able to give the love that they need, the forgiveness that they need. The truth is that if I go through this situation calm, in love, with peace, I can just not be impacted, not be affected. That doesn't mean that my empathy is dead. It just means my empathy doesn't control me, because it's my empathy that they want to use to manipulate. They want to manipulate me, and if they attack my empathy, they want me to help them manipulate other people. Does that make sense? So if I'm doing a bad thing to people, and I'm doing it publicly, and I'm doing it gleefully in your face, and I'm getting people riled up, and a lot of people are down with it. They want to see this bad thing happen to this group of people. But you are kind, and you are generous, and you are caring, but you don't have control, and you can't do anything. You feel paralyzed and hopeless and helpless to do anything. So instead, what you do is you get angry, and you focus your hatred in your words, your defiance, and you aim it at them. But what has that done? It's taken someone who had the capacity to love and forgive out of the game. How do I say this? It's part of a plot, an ancient plot to keep people controlled through fear. I'm not, I don't mean a conspiracy. It's just a way of doing things that has worked very successfully for thousands of years. And that is to get people distracted in fear and anger. But when you bring love into yourself, and you bring forgiveness into yourself, and I want to make clear that forgiveness is not tolerance or condoning. Forgiveness is you freeing yourself of somebody else's bad behavior. That's all. Doesn't mean you like it. Doesn't mean you accept it. Doesn't mean you don't try to stop it. It just means that you don't let it poison you where you are. So the thing is, you've got to understand that you can forgive the bad actors. You can forgive the situation. You can forgive yourself for not being able to do enough. You can let non-judgmental forgiveness and love flow through you, and let that be the energy that you give back in return to what's coming. You give that energy back to the people you care for when they are trapped in despair and fear. You give them the ability to love. You share the same thing. You tell them the same thing. You don't have to let this control you if you don't want to. But if you do, that's fine too. It's okay. It isn't going to change the universe. It's only going to change how we feel and we react to the situations around us. That's it. And this comes down to a choice. Where do you want to be? I can tell you that I know that the more people who react to this type of, I don't want to call it evil, that the more people who react to this type of lovelessness and fear-mongering and hatred and anger with love, it neutralizes that exponentially. Like it just creates this harmonic that smooths out those waves of fear and anger and terror. Now, the other positive aspect of living in that type of way, living in the state of grace, of unconditional love, and of unconditional forgiveness, is it gives you a clear head and a clear direction, so that when you need to act, when you need to fight, your head is clear and your heart is clear, and you don't get paralyzed by trying to analyze the situation through fear. The fear is gone. That's no longer part of the equation. But if you have to act, if you have to go and jump in and literally physically rescue someone, you do that because you're clear. Your brain is free from all that other garbage and all those other thoughts, and you're free to act, and you're free to love yourself unconditionally if you do not act, because it's okay to not act. To get rid of the judge inside of our heads is critical. It's very, very important to get rid of that judge, because that judge will reinstitute old fear. It will condemn us and it will punish us over and over and over again. So this becomes, in tough times, very much a daily practice of deciding. And this just comes down to a decision. What am I going to do today? Am I going to work on being a vessel and a conduit of unconditional love and forgiveness? Or am I going to fall into the fear and the anger? But the one thing, the first step I would recommend is that to put a rule on top of that. And that is no judgment against either decision. If you can do that, you will be free. You will be free. You can choose whichever one you want without being stuck to it. If you want to get angry, indignant, lash out, then you can choose to do that. And who cares? Big deal. Does that kind of stuff actually help? I don't know. I think maybe it could. In the certain circumstances, it might be the way that you communicate to somebody who needs to hear that kind of a thing. However, I think that the love inside of us, if we react with love, we become fearless. And without that fear, it just doesn't matter. I wish I could say it better. I really do. So I've gone on a long time and I feel like I haven't said anything. So I'm just going to stop talking. And I'm just going to stop and ask you to make a choice. And whether we're talking about, whatever's coming up in the United States in 2025 beyond, or what's happening in your relationships today, what's happening at work, what's happening with your finances, what's happening with your parents, your siblings, your children, your loved one. The fears that we feel about our relationships and our circumstances, the nervousness that we have, are built out of certain expectations. And those expectations can be killers. And that the same is true across the board. It's universal. It doesn't matter any of those situations. It's all the same dynamic. So the question is, what am I going to do? What am I going to do to train myself to think about things differently? Am I going to do that? Am I willing to do that today? Am I willing to try that for 5 minutes or not? But regardless of the decision, if you can just make one agreement with yourself, and that is to not judge yourself for what you decide. That's it. Just don't judge yourself for whatever thing you choose to do or feel. Just don't judge yourself on that. And you've already gotten halfway. That's just the biggest one, is the willingness to not judge yourself for your decision. All right? I would recommend going back and there's a guided meditation podcast. If you're interested in just learning more about the stuff I was talking about or babbling about, give that a shot. I think there's a lot of good there to help kind of get you into the groove and to see more about what I'm talking about. And then there's another podcast on how to love yourself. And that talks about this judgment and the fear as well, probably a lot more eloquently than this particular episode. I love you. I hope that you will love yourself today, unconditionally. And stay tuned. We should be coming back next week with our next episode is called Living in Love, the Power of Unconditional Love. And that episode talks about the transformative power of living from a place of unconditional love. We're going to explore what that actually means in a spiritual context and in a psychological context and its practical implication. And then we'll go back and we're actually going to revisit some of this and discuss the barriers to unconditional love, like fear, anger, resentment, judgment. I hope you'll be back. Hope I haven't run you off. So until next time, stay present, stay positive, and stay loved. If you like this podcast and you want to hear more, please don't forget to follow or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast player. And if you really like it, share it with other people that you know who you think might enjoy it as well. You can also find more about me and the work that I'm doing on my website at johndaughty.com. And as always, thank you so much for being part of the loved.